My name is Nora Whitfield, and I am 43 years old. Last month, I found a video I was never supposed to see. It was sitting in a shared folder I manage, mixed in with invoices and price lists. A raw clip somebody had dumped there while putting together a tribute reel for the garden center's big anniversary. I clicked it the way I click everything in that folder, half asleep, expecting a receipt. Instead, I watched my own family raise their glasses at a dinner I had missed because I was 300 miles away, catching someone else's fraud for a living. My brother stood up and called me Dad's useless little clerk. My sister laughed into her wine. And my mother, who has spent 6 years telling this whole town that she single-handedly saved my late father's business, lifted one hand and said the thing that finally turned the lights on inside me. I did not call anyone that night. I opened my laptop instead, and I started doing the one thing I am genuinely good at: reading the truth out of a pile of numbers. By the time the anniversary came around, every person in that clip was going to understand exactly who had been holding the whole thing up and exactly what it was going to cost them to find out. Welcome back to Burned Bridges Club, where the quietest person at the table turns out to be the one carrying the whole house, and where the truth keeps better records than any of us do. If you have ever been the dependable one, the one everyone leans on and no one thanks, stay with me. This story is for you. Drop a comment, and if these stories find you where you live, subscribe so the next one does too. It was a Tuesday, almost 11 at night, and I was in a hotel room in Charlotte that smelled like carpet cleaner and old coffee. I do this for work. I fly to a regional bank, sit in a windowless room for a week, and pull apart their loan files until the lie inside them stands up and introduces itself. I am a fraud and compliance analyst. People hand me 1,000 pages that all swear everything is fine, and my job is to find the $11 that prove it is not. I am very good at my job. I have never once been good at being a person. So I was in that hotel room with my shoes still on, working through the Draden style. Because somebody has to keep that place organized, and somehow that somebody has been me for 6 years. We were 3 weeks out from the 40th anniversary of Whitfield & Sons Garden Center. There was going to be a ribbon, a banner, the mayor with a little framed proclamation, the local paper. My cousin's kid had been told to gather old footage for a slideshow, and he had backed up his phone straight into the shared folder, raw and unedited. 40 seconds of a dog, a clip of the greenhouse in the rain, and then a clip from a family dinner I had not been at because I had been in a room exactly like this one, finding someone else's $11. I almost did not open it. I want you to know that. My thumb hovered, then I tapped it, because organizing that folder is a thing I do without thinking, the way you straighten a picture on someone else's wall. The screen lit up the dark room with a cold blue square. The sound came first, before the picture sharpened. Laughter. I knew every voice in it before I could see a single face. My mother's, low and pleased with itself. My brother Russell's, loud the way it always gets after the second beer, the way it fills a room, because the room is the only place he ever feels large. My sister Lainey's quick little laugh, the one she uses to let everyone know whose side she is on before she even knows what the joke is. The camera was pointed across the long table in my mother's kitchen, a table I have sat at maybe 1,000 times. It was a dinner from the week before. They had gone ahead without me, the way they always could. I turned the volume up. Somewhere on the nightstand, my own dinner went cold in its foam container, and I did not notice it for another hour. Russell was on his feet with a glass. He does that. He makes a toast out of nothing, because a toast is just a way to make everyone look at you. He was doing an impression of me, hunched over, squinting, stabbing at an invisible keyboard with 2 fingers. "To Nora," he said, and the table was already grinning before he finished. 43 years old, no ring, no kids, married to a filing cabinet. Dad's useless little clerk who counts a till she'll never own. Lainey laughed so hard she had to put her wine down. Be nice, she said, in the voice people use when they mean the exact opposite. And then my mother. Gail Whitfield, at the head of the table the way she is at the head of every table, raised one hand to settle them like she was the gentle one, the reasonable one, the one keeping the peace. Oh, let her be, she said. She likes feeling useful. Honestly, the poor thing would be lost without us to need her. The whole table came apart at that. Real laughter, the easy, helpless kind. The kind that only happens when nobody believes the person they are laughing about will ever hear it. I noticed my Aunt Dot at the edge of the frame. She laughed too, but her eyes dropped to her plate and stayed there, and her laugh came a half-second late, the way you clap at something you already regret. I sat on the edge of that hotel bed and I waited to cry, because that is what you are supposed to do. The tears did not come. Something else came instead. Something cold and orderly. The feeling I get when a messy file finally resolves into a clean set of columns. I paused the video on the exact frame where my mother's mouth was still shaping the word need. I looked at it for a long time. Then I reached for my keys on the nightstand and pressed my thumb against the small brass key on the ring, the worn one, the one my father gave me, and I held it the way other people hold a worry stone. I did that without deciding to. I have done it my whole life. You should know who I am before you decide how to feel about what I did. I find lies for a living, not the dramatic kind, the patient kind. A bank hires me when a number stops behaving, and I sit with their files until the number confesses. I taught myself the foundation of it on nights at a call center while I finished my degree by day, then made it official, certification after certification, each one earned on a lunch break. Nobody handed me a career. I built it out of being right when being right was inconvenient. That is where I am strong. People are the part I never learned. When I am thinking hard, I turn that brass key over in my hand, a habit my coworkers gave up teasing me about years ago. I was turning it that night in the hotel without knowing I had started. Here is the thing I will admit, because if I do not, the whole story falls apart. My weakness is not that I am soft. It is the opposite. I carry things before anyone asks me to. A bill arrives, I pay it. A problem appears, I solve it. Quietly, alone, at a kitchen table at midnight. I never learned how to need a single person, so instead I made myself the person everyone else needed. I called that strength for most of my life. It is just a more respectable way to disappear. I am good with numbers. I am terrible with people who treat my kindness like a utility that turns on whenever they flip a switch. My family had their hand on that switch for 6 years. I had just never sent them the bill. My father, Hal Whitfield, opened Whitfield & Sons 40 years ago on a piece of red clay land outside Asheville with 2 greenhouses and a hand-painted sign. He named it for sons he assumed he would have. He had 1 son, Russell, and 2 daughters, and the sign never changed. I used to think that was funny. I do not anymore. 6 years ago, my father died the way strong men sometimes do, all at once, on an ordinary Wednesday, between unloading a delivery and locking up the till. He left behind the business he loved and a story he had never told any of us. The garden center was drowning. He had been quietly borrowing against the building for years to keep the doors open through bad seasons, and the bank had finally lost its patience. There was a foreclosure date on the building and business loans coming due that the company could not cover. The whole thing, the greenhouses, the land, the name on the sign, was about to be sold off to pay people my father owed. My mother could not stop it. She had not worked a paying job in 30 years. Russell's credit looked like a crime scene. Laney did not have an income that would fit on a form. So the bank looked at the 5 of us standing in that lawyer's office and found exactly one name that made the math work. Mine. I sat down across from a commercial lending officer, and over 4 months and more signatures than I have ever put on anything, I bought the building out of foreclosure in my own name, took on the mortgage personally, and restructured the company so the loans were survivable, with myself as the controlling member of the new operating agreement. I did not do it to own anything. I did it so my mother would not be the woman who lost her husband and his life's work in the same season, so the 11 people who worked there kept their jobs, so my father's name stayed on that sign. Those were good reasons. They still are. I would do it again. But here is what happened to the story afterward. Everyone in the family knew, in the vaguest possible way, that I had helped with the business stuff. Light, breezy, a footnote. Like I had organized a drawer. Not one of them, in 6 years, ever asked whose name was on the deed. They did not want to know. Knowing would have meant the garden center was not really my mother's, and the story they all loved best was the one where Gail Whitfield rolled up her sleeves after Hal died and saved his business through sheer grit. She told it at church. She told it to the paper. I let her have it. I became the footnote who held the deed to the place where my whole family gathered to decide I was a joke. The building was just the foundation. After that, the rest came in the way water finds every crack in a wall. Russell drew a manager's salary from the garden center for a job he mostly did not do. He showed up at 10, left at 2, and the gap between what the company could afford to pay him and what he actually took home was quietly covered by transfers from me, because if I had not, the books would not have closed, and the staff would not have been paid. So I paid my brother to mock me, and I signed off on it myself. Lainey needed help with her rent after her marriage came apart. Just for a year, she said. That was 4 years ago. Then the school tuition for her 2 kids, because she could not possibly pull them out mid-year. My mother's property taxes, her medication copays, the new roof, the surprise vet bill, the thing that always came up. Every month it was the same quiet ceremony. On the first, I would sit down wherever I was and move money. Russell's shortfall, Lainey's rent, the school, the utilities, my mother. I never announced any of it. I did it the way you keep a garden alive, a little water here, a little there, except the garden kept sending me a longer list. I kept a private file with a tab for each of them because tracking money is just what I do. But in 6 years, I had never once highlighted the whole thing and asked the spreadsheet for the total. I knew the number would be a mirror, and I was not ready to see who was standing in it. I know what you are thinking. How does a woman who hunts fraud for a living let herself get used like this for 6 years? It is a fair question. I was not blind. I tried. About 3 years in, I asked my mother whether Russell could start covering part of his own salary now that the spring season had been strong. She cut me off before I finished. Your brother is going through a hard time, Nora. You're the steady one. Don't you dare turn this into a thing about you. So I dropped it. Another time I asked if the whole family could sit down, just once, and talk honestly about the garden center's finances. The meeting I scheduled had exactly one person at it. Me, in the back office, with 5 chairs and a pot of coffee nobody came to drink. I kept paying, but not because I was a fool. I kept paying because every time I imagined stopping, the consequence had a face. Cut off the tuition mid-year and a 10-year-old gets pulled out of school in front of his friends. Stop covering Russell's draw and 3 employees who had nothing to do with any of this miss a paycheck. Let the property taxes lapse and my widowed mother gets a letter from the county. Those were not abstractions. They were real people who would really be hurt, and I was the only adult in the family who seemed able to see them. So I told myself the story that people in my position always tell themselves, that underneath all the taking, they loved me, that the gratitude was just somewhere I could not see it, buried, waiting. That was the lie I lived on for 6 years, and the video, when it finally found me, took that last lie away clean. I did not sleep much in that hotel. But in the morning, I made the bad hotel coffee anyway, because I am not a person who lets the floor drop out of a Wednesday. I sat at the little desk and opened my laptop, and my hand stopped over the spreadsheet, the one with the recurring transfers that fire off on the first of every month like a heartbeat I had stopped hearing. The next round was due in 19 days. I counted them on the hotel calendar, and then I noticed the thing that actually made the back of my neck go cold, in a way the video had not managed. The first of the month landed on a Saturday this year, the same Saturday as the 40th anniversary celebration of Whitfield and Sons. The party I was paying for. The party where the mayor would hand my mother a framed proclamation and the local paper would photograph her smiling under my father's name, the woman who saved it all. I sat there with the coffee going cold for the second time in 2 days. And for the first time in 6 years, on the morning a payment was due, I did not move the money. I opened a fresh tab instead. I pulled 6 years of bank history, every account, every statement, and I began to read it the way I read a stranger's books when something in them feels off. I want to be honest about what this was at the start. I was not planning revenge. I genuinely was not. I was doing an audit, and an audit is a calm, professional, almost boring thing. But by the time I was finished, I could not have told you exactly where the audit became a reckoning. That weekend, I went home to Asheville and watched the video again. Not to bleed, but to audit it, the same way I was auditing the money. I scrubbed it frame by frame, pausing on each face the way I flag a suspicious entry. Russell was the loudest, on his feet, doing the impression. Lainey was the chorus, laughing on cue the way she has her entire life to stay on the warm side of whoever is holding court. My mother was the conductor. One raised hand and they all settled. One dry little remark and they all came apart. She would be lost without us to need her. She did not even raise her voice to land it. And there was Aunt Dot, my father's sister, half out of frame because she was holding the phone. She laughed when the others laughed, always a half beat behind, her eyes dropping after. Dot has run the register at the Garden Center 2 days a week for 20 years. She had backed her phone up into the shared drive for the slideshow and set the clip down in the one folder she knew I lived in. I turned the brass key over in my hand, slow. I could not tell yet what that was. A clumsy thumb on a small screen, or a woman who could not say the words out loud and so handed me the evidence, hoping I would do what she never had the spine to. I did not know which, but I knew I would find out before this was over. The strangest part was how completely normal everyone stayed. 2 days after I watched my family call me useless, the phone buzzed along like nothing on earth had shifted. Russell first. "Hey sis, the truck reg is due and the account's tight. Can you cover it this month?" Not a hello, just the ask, the way you prompt a vending machine. Then Lainey, a photo of a sofa, $1,100, with a note. "For the new place. What do you think?" My sister was asking my permission to spend my money and did not even know that was what she was doing. Then my mother's voicemail. "Nora, honey, have you confirmed the caterer for the anniversary? And do not embarrass me in front of the whole town. You know how you go quiet and strange. People will be watching." People will be watching. I almost laughed out loud in my empty kitchen. She had no idea how right she was about to be. Not one of them knew I had seen the video. Not one of them suspected that the woman who paid for everything had finally sat down and started counting. And that was the only real advantage I had ever held in this family. For the first time in 6 years, I had time, and they did not even know the clock had started. So I did what I do. I built a clean record, not a journal full of feelings, a record. I opened a fresh workbook, gave each of them a tab, and went back 6 years, statement by statement, logging every transfer. Date, amount, recipient, reason. I did not round up to make it uglier. I recorded what was true, line by line, exactly the way I would build a file for a client about to face an audit, because that is precisely what this was, even if the auditor and the audited happened to share a last name. The key turned steady in my hand. There is a calm that settles over me when I am putting a mess into order. Holding that first printed page under my kitchen light, I understood something. I was not building a weapon. A weapon is loud, and I was finished being loud near people who only ever heard me when I said yes. I was building a mirror. And for certain people, an accurate mirror is the cruelest thing you can hand them. I drove out to Aunt Dot's that Sunday with a tray she had left at my place because even now I return the dish. She made coffee, and I let the quiet do the work the way I do with a client sitting on a number they do not want to say. Finally, she cracked. "You found it," she said. Not a question. I did not answer, which was its own answer. "I put it in the drive by mistake. I saw it sitting there after, with your name all over that folder, and I knew you'd be the one to open it." She looked at me, something close to shame in her face. "I should have stopped them years ago. The first time they started in on you, I should have put my fork down and said something. I just didn't want to be the next one they laughed about." And there it was, the whole rotten engine of that family in a single sentence. Everyone too afraid of the table to ever defend anyone sitting at it. "Was that the first time?" I asked. She would not meet my eyes. "No, honey. That's just how they talk about you when you're not in the room. The Nora jokes, about as dependable as dessert." I thanked her for the coffee and left. She had done me the one kindness no one else in that family ever had. She let me see the truth. But understanding someone and being able to lean on them are two completely different accounts. Dot handed me the proof and washed her hands of what I did with it. I drove home knowing what I had always known. I was, as ever, on my own. So I ran a small test, the kind I run on a suspicious account before I commit to anything. I wanted to see how fast the warmth turned when the money slowed even a little. I paid Lainey's rent 3 days late, on purpose. Just 3 days. A nudge. The response told me everything. My mother called within the hour. Not Lainey, whose rent it actually was. My mother, the accounts payable manager of this family, calling to collect on her behalf. "Nora, what has gotten into you?" she started, with that bright, hard edge she uses when she has already decided you are the problem. "Lainey's landlord called her. The rent was late. The whole family is talking about how cold you've gotten. Ever since you got so important, with your little bank job. You've decided you're better than us." I held the phone away from my ear and just looked at it. 3 days. 6 years of being exactly on time, to the dollar. And the first time I am 3 days late, I am cold. I am difficult. I think I am better than them. "The money was never the issue with you, Nora," she said, landing it like a line she had practiced. "Your attitude is." I told her I would take care of it, and I hung up. And I sat in the quiet for a long while and let myself finally calculate what 6 years of perfect, silent, on-time generosity had actually bought me. The total came to nothing, not a thank you. Not one person at one dinner saying my name kindly when I was not there to hear it. Nothing but the standing right to keep being on time. That was the night I went to the file cabinet. I keep my real records in a gray metal cabinet in the corner of my office, the kind that holds the actual skeleton of a life. Bottom drawer, behind the hanging folders, there was a thick packet I had not opened in 6 years. The closing documents from when I bought the garden center. I carried it to the kitchen table and spread it flat under the warm yellow light. No blue screen this time. No laughter. Just paper. There it was, page after page. The deed to the land, recorded with the county, grantee printed in plain black type. Nora M. Whitfield. The mortgage note, borrower of record, the same name. The operating agreement for Whitfield and Sons Garden Center, LLC, controlling member, the same name again. The title insurance, the escrow statements, the whole architecture of ownership, and my name on every load-bearing page. I ran my thumb down the deed. I had always known this. I had signed all of it. But knowing a thing and looking at the proof of it laid out flat on your own kitchen table are not the same. The garden center my whole family called Mom's Place. My father's name still on the sign. The business my mother told the entire town she saved with her own 2 hands. All of it, legally and undeniably, was mine. I had been the owner and the punchline at the same time. I had paid for the roof they stood under while they decided I was a joke. I set the brass key down on top of the deed, and the last of the fog burned off. I was not confused anymore about what I was going to do. I only had to figure out how to do it so cleanly that no one could ever call it cruelty. The next morning, I did the thing I had avoided for 6 years. I went back to the workbook with a tab for each of them, highlighted the whole column, every transfer to every account over 6 years, and I let the spreadsheet do what spreadsheets do. The total appeared at the bottom. I am not going to say the number out loud because the number is not really the point, and saying it would sound like bragging, and I have spent my entire life not bragging. But I will tell you, it was a house. It was the retirement I do not have. It was bigger than I had feared, and I had feared a great deal. And here is the strange part. I did not cry about the money. Money is just numbers, and numbers have never been able to hurt me. What got me, sitting there with that total glowing on the screen, was the time. 6 years of Friday nights I gave away, trips I never booked because the first of the month always arrived, a life I kept postponing because someone always needed me more than I needed to be a person. I let myself cry for about 4 minutes. Then I dried my face the way my father used to, because crying is a feeling, and a feeling is not a plan. And I finally understood what my mother meant on that video. She said I liked feeling useful, that I would be lost without them to need me. The truth is, someone in that family should have felt grateful. Every single one of them was deeply, privately grateful for exactly one thing. That in 6 years, I had never once sat down and added it up. If you have ever been afraid to total a column because you knew the number would tell you the truth about who you have been carrying, then you already know how I felt at that table. Stay with me, because what I did next was not loud and it was not cruel. It was just honest, and honest turned out to be the most powerful thing I owned. If any of this is landing a little too close to home, tell me about it in the comments and subscribe so you do not miss how it ends. The first real test came from Russell, exactly as I knew it would. His text about the truck registration was still sitting there. The old me would have paid it within the hour and never mentioned it. This time I waited a full day. Then I typed back one line, calm, with no anger in it, because anger would have given him something to push against. I'm not able to cover that this month. No reason. No apology. A clear sentence with no excuse attached is the hardest thing in the world for a certain kind of person to argue with. My phone rang before I set it down. "Since when?" he said, the warmth gone in about 4 seconds. "Since when are you not able? You got that fancy bank job, those trips. What are you hoarding it for, to feel important?" I stayed quiet, which only made him louder. "You think you're better than the rest of us now, sitting there with your spreadsheets." And then, because he could not help it, because the video had already told me exactly who he was, he reached for it again. "Don't act like you're not the saddest one in this whole family, Nora." The same contempt from the same mouth, except this time I was on the phone to hear it instead of watching it on a screen. I let the silence sit. Then I said, "Okay, Russell." And I hung up. One sentence. I'm not able to. It cost me almost nothing to say, and it was going to cost him more than he could imagine. After that, the phone did not stop. It turns out, a family that never once calls to ask how you are will call without pause the moment the money flinches. Lainey, texting that I was being so selfish that Russell already had enough on his plate. A cousin I had not heard from in a year, suddenly concerned about the family being divided. Then my mother, the heavy artillery. She did not call. She sent a single text, in writing, I think, because she wanted me to read it twice. "After everything this family has done for you." That was the whole message. I almost laughed. I actually opened the workbook and scrolled through it, just to be sure I had not missed some account where the help had flowed the other direction. There was not one. Everything that family had ever done for me fit comfortably in the white space under the totals. I set the phone face down and did not answer a single one of them. Instead, I took out a stack of slim navy folders, the heavy kind with a fold-over flap, and laid them in a neat row on the table. I did not yet know exactly what words would go inside, but I knew the shape of the thing I was building now, and for the first time in 6 years, the quiet in my house felt like it belonged to me. I thought hard about how to do it, because how you do a thing is the whole thing. I could have detonated it in the family group chat, posted the totals, named who took what, made it loud. But loud was their language, never mine. Loud keeps you in the room arguing and explaining, and I was so tired of being in the room. So I chose the opposite. I made a plan in 4 parts, and I wrote each one down so I would not soften on it at the last second. 1. I would transfer the garden center back to the family, cleanly and legally. The building and my controlling stake both, so that no one could ever say I had stolen my father's business out from under them. But it would come with the truth attached, the real mortgage, the real monthly losses, the actual cost of the thing my mother had been telling the whole town she carried alone. Let her carry it for real, as a grown woman, the way I had been carrying it in the dark. 2. Every voluntary payment, the truck, the rent, the tuition, the salary shortfall, all of it, would stop on the 1st. 3. I would hand each of them a folder with their own complete record inside and one plain page telling them exactly when the help ended. 4. The most important part, the one I underlined twice. I would not argue. I would say my piece, set down the folders, and walk out the door. I was not going to fight them, because fighting only ties you to people. I was going to balance the account and leave, and the calendar had already chosen the day for me. The next payment was due on the 1st. So was the 40th anniversary, the ribbon, the mayor, the paper, the whole town gathered under my father's name to watch my mother be crowned for a rescue she never made. I decided to let the date make it look like fate. I know some of you are already shaking your heads, thinking she should have just emailed the spreadsheet and been done. Stay with me, because the way this lands in a room full of witnesses is the entire reason I am telling you. If you have ever had to set a boundary with people who only respect you when you are useful, you are going to want to see how this one goes. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and let us get to that party. I did none of it on feeling. I am a compliance analyst. I do things in the right order, or I do not do them at all. First, I sat down with a real estate and business attorney in town, a woman named Patrice, who did not blink at anything I told her. She read the documents and confirmed what I already knew. The building was mine, free to transfer however I wished. The controlling interest was mine to sign over. I could hand the whole thing to my mother on Monday morning, but she warned me about the part I had already understood. Transferring the business did not erase the mortgage on the building, and it did not erase the operating losses. If my mother could not qualify to assume the loan or refinance it herself, she would have to find a way to carry it, or sell. The gift had a price tag stitched into the lining, and the price tag was simply the truth of what the place actually cost to keep alive. Patrice looked at me carefully, the way people do when they are checking whether you understand what you are choosing. I told her I understood completely. I was handing my mother the real weight of the business she had spent 6 years pretending to lift, and letting her decide what to do with it as an adult, the way I had had to. As for the salary draws and the rent and the tuition, those were gifts, Patrice confirmed. And a gift can stop on the day you decide it stops. I gave fair notice anyway, because I am not the one who behaves badly in this story. I had her draw up clean transfer documents, and I wrote a single plain letter to go inside each folder. No feelings in it. Just facts and dates. Facts have never needed my help to do damage. The anniversary machine ground on around me, and the whole thing ran on one quiet assumption, that Nora would handle it. Of course I was paying for the tent and the chairs and the caterer. I had put the deposit down months ago, back when I still believed silence and money were the price of being loved. And there was a second assumption layered under the first. Everyone expected me to speak. The dependable daughter, standing up at the milestone to toast the strong mother who held the family business together. My mother had been telling people for weeks. Gail says Nora is going to say a few words about her dad, a neighbor told me in the grocery store, beaming. She's so proud of you, honey. Says you're her little numbers girl. Her little numbers girl. Who likes feeling useful? I smiled, said something gracious, and pushed my cart away. And somewhere between the bread and the eggs, I made the decision final. Because here is what they had done without realizing it. They had built me a stage. A tent full of witnesses, the neighbors, the mayor, the man from the paper, all waiting for me to play the grateful daughter one final time. So I decided to keep the stage. I would simply trade the script they had written for me for the one that was actually true. The day before the party, I drove out to the garden center to check the setup, and I got one last reminder of exactly why I was doing this. Russell was there hanging a banner, a beer already in his hand at 2 in the afternoon, holding court for a couple of younger cousins. When I came in carrying a box of glass votives, he tipped his head at me. "Careful," he said, loud enough to carry. "Don't upset the bookkeeper. She's been real touchy since she decided she's too good for us." The cousins did the uncertain laugh, the one you do when you are not sure whether something is a joke. Lainey, arranging flowers nearby, waved me off when I tried to ask her a billing question. "Nora, nobody wants to talk invoices the day before a party. Read the room." My mother breezed past all of it, fussing with the angle of a tablecloth, never once turning toward me, as though I were part of the rental company. And in the corner, watching all of it, was my niece Maya. 17, Russell's daughter, home for the summer. She caught my eye, and her face did the thing the rest of theirs never did. It flinched. She had heard him. A joke is just a knife somebody is pretending not to hold, and I had been the thing this family sharpened itself on for as long as I could remember. Tomorrow, for once, I would be the one who got to set the knife down on the table. Maya followed me out to the gravel lot while I caught my breath against the tailgate of my car. She is a good kid, the only one in the next generation who texts me on my birthday without anyone reminding her. "Aunt Nora," she said, hugging her arms against the cool air. "Are you okay? They shouldn't talk to you like that. It isn't funny." 17 years old, and she was the first person in that entire family in 6 years to ask me if I was okay. Not what I could pay for, not whether the caterer was confirmed. Just, "Are you okay?" It nearly came undone right there, that one question, because I suddenly did not want her to watch what I was about to do and mistake it for cruelty. "I'm okay, Maya," I told her. "Honestly, I'm better than I've been in a long time." She frowned, not quite believing me. "They take you for granted. You're the only one in this family who actually shows up for me." And that, right there, was the thing that locked it in. The kindest thing I could do for that girl was not to keep absorbing it quietly forever, teaching her that this is what love costs a woman. The kindest thing was to show her, calmly, in front of everyone, that you are allowed to stop, that you can love people and still refuse to be the thing they stand on. I squeezed her hand. "Come find me tomorrow," I said, right after I say my few words. That last night, I sat at my kitchen table and put it all together. The folders were lined up, navy, one for each of them. Into my mother's, I slid the transfer documents that would put the building and the business into her name. The letter from Patrice explaining that the mortgage and the losses would now be hers to carry or refinance. And her ledger, 6 years of every dollar, totaled at the bottom. Into Russell's, the salary the company could never actually afford to pay him, with the date the shortfall would stop. Into Lainey's, 4 years of rent and a sofa's worth of what do you thinks, and the same date. I sealed each one and wrote the name on the front in my steady hand. I turned the brass key over once between names, the small sound of it filling the kitchen like a slow clock. My phone lay face down the whole time, dark, and I never turned it over to watch the video again. I had it memorized, and anyway, the laughing was about to stop mattering. 4 folders, no speech to rehearse. I had spent 6 years saying yes to these people without ever saying a word about it. I figured I could say no the very same way. Quietly. In writing, so it could not be argued with. I turned off the light and went to bed, and for the first night in 3 weeks, I slept the whole way through. The garden center looked beautiful by 4 o'clock, and I will give them that. There was a white tent over the gravel lot, strings of lights between the greenhouses, a long table of food, and a banner that read, 40 years, in gold letters, already shedding a little glitter onto the ground. My father's old hand-painted sign had been cleaned up for the occasion. My whole extended family was there. Aunts and uncles and cousins, plus half the neighborhood, the wholesale grower my father bought from for 30 years, a man named Petrakis who had known me since I was a kid, the man from the paper with his camera, and the mayor with a little framed proclamation under his arm. My mother held court near the welcome table in a new dress, accepting the afternoon like tribute. Well, after Hal passed, somebody had to keep his dream alive, she was saying to a circle of neighbors as I came in. And I just did what had to be done. She caught my eye across the tent and gave me the look, the one that means, get ready, you are up soon. Russell was already loose and grinning. Lainey hovered near our mother, basking in the borrowed warmth. Maya stood off to the side and gave me a small, private nod. When the cake was cut, my mother tapped a glass with a fork, and the tent went quiet. I think my daughter Nora wants to say a few words, she said, with a magnanimous little wave in my direction. She helped with some of the paperwork over the years. She's good at taking care of the little things. Polite applause rolled around the tent. They were all waiting for the grateful daughter. They were waiting for thank you, Mom, for everything. I stood up, and I felt perfectly, strangely calm, the way I feel when a long set of books finally closes to the penny. I did not have a glass in my hand. I had the stack of navy folders and the brass key, and I set the key on the table where my mother could see it. The small click of it was the only sound in the room. Thank you all for coming, I said. And I meant it. 40 years is worth celebrating. My father built something real out of red clay and stubbornness, and I loved him. I let the tent settle into the warmth of that for a moment before I went on. Then I picked up the first folder. Mom, this one is for you. I carried it over and set it gently in her hands. Inside is the deed to the land and the controlling interest in Whitfield and Sons. They've been in my name for 6 years, since I bought the business out of foreclosure after Dad died, so the bank wouldn't sell it off to strangers. Today, I'm signing all of it back to you. The garden center is yours again, completely. A confused murmur started up. This was not the speech anyone had come to hear. My mother's smile froze on her face. Along with the mortgage, I added quietly, which I've carried every month for 6 years, and the operating losses, which I've covered every month for 6 years. The papers inside explain how to assume the loan. You'll want to call the bank on Monday. Then I picked up the next 2. Russell, Lainey. I set theirs on the table in front of them. Inside each of these is a complete record of what I've paid for this family. Every bill, every transfer, every month. Going back 6 years. It's all there, to the dollar. I didn't add anything to it. I didn't round it up. I just wrote down what was true. The murmuring spread now, aunts leaning toward uncles, the neighbors going still. Russell had his folder open, and I watched the color drain out of his face as he read his own number. Lainey had not moved. My mother was staring at the documents in her lap as though they might bite her. I kept my voice level, almost kind, because I had not come to wound anyone. I had come to be clear. For 6 years, I said, I was told I should be grateful, that I liked feeling useful, that I'd be lost without all of you to need me. I looked around the tent, at the neighbors and the cousins and the man from the paper. So I wanted to do this here, with everyone who loves this family in the room, just to make the record clear about who exactly was carrying whom. My mother came up out of her chair so fast it scraped and tipped, and the clatter of it was the loudest thing under that tent. "How dare you?" she said, and her voice cracked high and ugly across the lot. "How dare you do this to me? At this, in front of all these people? You've always been like this, Nora. Jealous, dramatic, starved for attention." The transfer documents slid off her lap into the gravel, and she did not even look down at them. "You think a stack of papers makes you better than your own family?" Russell was on his feet too, the folder crushed in his fist. "A few receipts," he spat. "You think a few receipts mean you're better than us? You always thought you were better than us." Lainey had finally opened hers, and I watched the blood leave her face as she found the rent total, 4 years of it laid out plain, and she started to cry. But it was the panicked kind of crying, not the sorry kind. The whole tent was frozen. Every neighbor and cousin and the poor mayor with his little frame, all of them watching my mother scream across her own anniversary party. And here is the only thing that actually mattered. I never raised my voice, not once. I stood in the center of all that noise, and I felt the stillest I have ever felt in my life. I waited until my mother ran out of air. Then I said quietly, so they all had to go silent to hear it, "I never wanted the business, Mom. I only ever wanted one of you to ask who paid for it. In 6 years, not one of you ever did." There was a silence after that you could have set a glass down on. Old Petrakis, the grower who had known my father for 30 years, was standing near the back. He said it just loud enough to carry, more to himself than to anyone. 40 years, I thought Hal's wife saved this place after he passed. He shook his head slowly. Turns out, it was the girl they kept in the back office. And I watched it move across that tent, face by face, the truth finally landing where the laughing used to live. Maya crossed the gravel and came and stood beside me and took my hand. I picked up the last folder, the one with the schedule in it, all the dates. Everything stopped. I did not slide it across dramatically. I set it down the way I set down anything I am finished with. Then I turned, not to my mother, not to Russell, but to the whole tent, the aunts and the neighbors, and the man from the paper who had stopped taking pictures. "Thank you again for coming to celebrate my father," I said, and my voice was even, almost gentle. 40 years is a lot. He'd have loved this. I picked my coat up off the back of the chair. "The payments stop on the 1st, I said to the room, simply, the way you would report the weather. "The garden center is yours now, Mom. I hope it's everything you've been telling everyone it was." My mother opened her mouth, but nothing came out that she would want a tent full of witnesses to hear. So she said nothing at all. I picked up the brass key off the table, because that one I was keeping, and I buttoned my coat. Maya walked me out past the rows of people who were not laughing anymore, and I felt their eyes on me. And for the first time in my life, I did not mind them at all. Outside, the evening air came down clean over the greenhouses. I pulled my phone out of my pocket from pure habit, and the screen was dark, and there was not one message on it that I needed to open. I put it back. I got in my car and drove the 20 minutes to my own small house, the one with my name on the deed and nobody else's expectations inside the walls. I did not slam a single door on my way out of that lot. I had simply, finally, stopped holding one open with my own 2 hands. The fallout came in exactly the shape I had expected, only faster. My mother called the bank that Monday, like the letter told her to, and learned what the garden center actually cost to keep open every month. She could not carry it alone. She refinanced what she could, cut her spending to the bone for the first time in her adult life, and put Russell on a real schedule because the company could no longer pay him for hours he did not work. She kept the doors open. She is running it now. For real, at 65. The way I ran it in the dark for 6 years. Russell stopped drawing the salary the business could never afford. It turned out he could have done the actual job for years. He simply never had to. Lainey took a part-time job at a dental office and moved to a smaller apartment across town. And the story they told, of course, was that I had abandoned my family and humiliated my poor widowed mother at her own celebration. The relatives who had not been in the tent believed it. The ones who were there, who watched my mother scream and read Russell's total over his shoulder, went quiet and careful around her after that. I never defended myself to a single one of them. The record said everything I needed to say, and it never once needed my help. When an aunt called to lecture me about forgiveness and being the bigger person, I did not argue. I told her this was not something I was looking for input on, wished her a good night, and hung up. It closes an account faster than anything I know. Life got quieter, and then it got good. For the first time in 6 years, I had my evenings and my Saturdays and the money I had been quietly bleeding out every first of the month. I took a long weekend and drove up into the mountains and did not bring my laptop, and I had genuinely forgotten what my own time felt like in my own hands. About a month after the party, my phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Dot. One line. "You did the right thing. I'm sorry I never did." I looked at it for a while. It was true, and it cost her something to send. But it was not enough to undo 20 years of laughing a half beat behind and looking down at her plate, and we both knew that. So I wrote back, "Thank you, Dot. That means something." And I left it there. Understanding a person does not obligate you to keep paying their tab in money or in chances. The one relationship I kept was Maya. She calls me now, not when she needs something, just to talk. Sometimes she drives over and we make dinner, and she tells me about her last year of high school and where she wants to go to college, and I tell her she can study anything she wants, and I have already set aside what she will need. No strings, because there is exactly one ledger I still keep with family, and it is the kind where both columns actually fill in. The rest of them have my number. They know where I live. The door is not locked, exactly. I am just no longer standing in it, holding it open with my own 2 hands, waiting to be needed. I learned something at that party I wish someone had told me at 28. Love is not an invoice the people you love get to keep running forever, and the day you finally sit down and total it up, you find out very quickly who was your family and who was only ever your customer. That is my story. 6 years of silence, 4 folders, and 1 anniversary that finally told the truth. If you have ever been the one quietly keeping everyone afloat, the dependable one nobody thinks to thank, let this be your sign. You are allowed to stop. You can set the weight down and still be a good person. If this story found you tonight, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Tell me your own version in the comments and subscribe so I can find you again in the next one.